So I'm going to talk about the new Mega Man cartoon that happened recently. Now, of course, this is not the only Mega Man cartoon that was ever made, and my parallel universe self did a review of the 90s Ruby Spears Mega Man animated series, and he talked about a couple of other versions of Mega Man. So if you'd like to know more, I suggest checking out that video. Though before we begin, I should note that I did hear a few alumni of the Ruby Spears Mega Man cartoon doing voices in Mega Man Fully Charged. Most recognizable was Gary Chalk, who is the voice of Dr. Light in Mega Man Fully Charged, and he did the voices of a couple of characters in the Ruby Spears Mega Man cartoon. I don't know if it was intentional to bring him in, but all I know now is if Proto Man shows up, he better be voiced by Scott McNeil. But this new Mega Man is brought to us by Man of Action, the writing collaborative behind stuff like Ben 10 and Generator Rex, among a bunch of other things. I've always liked their work, and they've always done really good science fiction-y type of stories, as well as stories about very young heroes, so doing a Mega Man adaptation seemed to be a perfect fit for them. However, we didn't really hear or see much about it since it was announced, aside from a couple of still images of what Mega Man was going to look like surfaced. And I heard a lot of people didn't really like the redesign, but personally I thought it was alright. It definitely did resemble Mega Man, but in a much more stylized manner. But as new information started to come up, a lot of people were a bit concerned because it seemed like the show was going to be about some kid that has the power to just turn into Mega Man and fight robots, and that sounded like a very drastic change from the series we all know. However, in the first episode, it's revealed that he's an android named Aki who was built by Dr. Light, so it does kind of follow the storyline, but does a few things different. Well, more than a few, but we'll get into that. The way he turns into Mega Man is kind of strange, because apparently he's got this little robot like living inside of his head that kind of controls things and can power him up and stuff like that, and it's never really explained. I've only watched like maybe the first 6 or so episodes, so I don't know if they're going to have like an origin story towards the end, which seems to be a problem with a lot of shows I watch. I really don't know why we can't have an origin story for something like this, right away, but I will say that I kind of like the little guy. He's got a very wise guy type of attitude, and he is kind of funny. I just wish we got more of an explanation for him. And just like in the original series, Mega Man, or Aki I guess, has a sister named Suna, who is an actual human. She's Dr. Light's actual daughter, and I guess she's supposed to be like Roll in this series. She does help him out a lot, and she has these drones that she can control and send out to do different things. And yes, Rush is in this show as well, and he's as awesome as a loyal robot dog ever could be. And you can tell Man of Action's writing is present in this, because I did get a Ben, Gwen, and Grandpa Max vibe from Mega Man, Suna, and Dr. Light, with one major difference. In Ben 10, Grandpa Max knew about Ben's powers. In this, Mega Man has a secret identity, and only Suna knows about it. And it's weird because when it comes to a superhero concealing their identity, usually they'd cover their face or at least change something about their face. With Aki, when he turns into Mega Man, his face is exposed and he has the same voice. So when he's talking to someone who's not supposed to know his secret identity, apparently they don't recognize him, including Dr. Light. You'd think that Dr. Light would recognize, his android son, but apparently not. It's like everyone in this town is stupid. So immediately I did kind of like the style of this show. It was CGI, and the CGI was okay for the most part, but there were a lot of moments in the show when they had these pixelated, 8-bit or 16-bit looking scenes. Sometimes they would actually replicate a famous moment from one of the Mega Man games, but I thought it was really nice that they would actually, go so far to try and mimic the game a little bit. They even had some really cool chip tunes in it, so I thought that was a really nice touch. The CGI, however, is nothing really to write home about. Although, with the world they built here and the CGI, it kind of reminded me of another show, because this is a society with, humans working alongside robots and everything, and it immediately reminded me of this show that came out, I think in, the 2000s, or perhaps the late 90s, I'm not really sure, but it was this show that I had completely forgotten about. I think it was called cubics or something like that. I remember vaguely watching it at one point. I genuinely don't remember anything about it. But it was kind of in a similar vein to that, where it's like a world of robots and kids and humans, working alongside each other. The difference is, after looking at images of cubics, doesn't look like that show aged very well. The designs of the Robot Masters are pretty on point as well. They are recognizable as to who they are. There are, I think, going to be some new characters in this show as well, so that's kind of a welcome change. However, the thing about this show, and this is probably my biggest problem with it, is the ham-fisted messages. And as usual, Mega Man can't steal the powers of the Robot Masters, but instead of defeating them and taking their powers, or like in the Ruby Spears cartoon where he just kind of touches them and kind of absorbs their circuitry or whatever was supposed to be going on there, he actually has to shoot this beam at them, and he has to like keep the beam on them for a certain amount of time so he can, I guess, absorb their technology or whatever, however this is supposed to work. I thought that was weird, but then I thought this is probably going to be some kind of game mechanic that they're going to implement for an inevitable tie-in game with this show, so I let that one go. What I did kind of like, however, is when Mega Man uses the power of one of the Robot Masters, he also kind of adapts something from their personality, which I thought was kind of neat. Like, with Flame Man, he showed up and he was angry and he was destroying everything. So when Mega Man had his power, Mega Man also started becoming irrationally angry. And there was one where he fought Drill Man, and when he took Drill Man's powers, he was having trouble controlling it. Like, his head was spinning and he couldn't keep his balance and stuff like that. I thought that was pretty neat. However, this kind of ties in with what I mentioned earlier about there being ham-fisted messages. Like in the episode where Fireman attacked, and Mega Man realized that he's just angry about everything. They would have, like, a moment in the battle where they stopped and they had to, like, talk about things and work things out. And this happened every time one of the Robot Masters would attack. Like, they had Drill Man in another episode, and they had this whole backstory with him about how he wanted to play the piano and not be a driller, but he couldn't do that, and it had to be, he had to be the Drill Man or whatever. And there's this whole moment where it's like they tried to like work things out with the Robot Masters, and I'm just like, whatever happened to like fighting bad guys? Whatever happened to that? Not every bad guy needs an unfortunate backstory that can be worked out. Sometimes they're just insane and they want to hurt people. To quote Chris Rock, whatever happened to crazy? You can't be crazy no more? The bad guy in the show is this guy called Breaker Knight, and at first he doesn't seem like a bad guy. He just kind of shows up and is like a regular guy, but he's totally one of those characters where you point at him and go, that's the bad guy, and sure enough, it turns out he is in fact the villain of the series. He's the one sending robots to, attack people, to sort of put distrust in the public about robots, because he doesn't think robots and humans can work together or live, coexist or whatever. So at this point, you might be asking yourself, is Dr. Wily in this show? Yes, he is. That's him. Burt Wily. He's Mega Man's classmate. And it wasn't blatantly obvious to me until one of the episodes where apparently he got some kind of bad haircut where, like, the middle of his head got shaved off or something stupid like that. But then he had to help Mega Man out, or Aki rather, out with something. So he did, and he showed him his bald head, I guess, and he said something like, I was feeling a bit wily today, and I'm like, what? What the heck? I didn't even realize that was supposed to be Dr. Wily until I looked up his last name on Wikipedia, and he just kind of mentioned, oh, I'm just Wily, and I was thinking, like, is this a reference, or is this foreshadowing? Because if this is, like, foreshadowing, and he becomes a villain, like, later on, then I will have a lot of respect for the show. But if not, then what the hell? And yes, Mega Man attends school in this, as does Suna and all their other friends and everything. So it's a school show, and y'all know how I love those. It's another one of those situations where it's like, I kind of like the action, and I like the direction the show is going in, but, aside from the, stuff with the Robot Masters, it's just, the school stuff is always boring. It's always gonna be boring. Nobody wants to see shows about people going to school. I want to see robots fighting each other, and I want to see a hero fighting the bad robots. That's what people want to see. So at this point, the question is, did I like this? Well, partially. I definitely like the action. I like the new designs. I like the setup. It's just, there's so many things that I have an issue with. I think it might be because recently I was exposed to the Ruby Spears Mega Man cartoon, and while that did have a lot of flaws, I think with this show I was kind of hoping we get something similar to that. Just, you know, improved and updated, but that's not really what this show is. And I don't know if it's my own personal biases because of that, or if I'm just having some kind of issue with the show itself. But you know, I'll praise it for what it did right, but at the same time, I can't ignore what it's doing wrong. This is definitely not one of the worst things I've ever seen. I feel like it could have worked on some level, and especially with Man of Action working on it, because I really like their work. I hope maybe that this show will improve at one point. Like, if they make, like, you know, his friend become Dr. Wily and kind of go evil, then I will give it some respect, but for now, I'm probably not going to continue this one. And I think that's about all I got to say about Mega Man Fully Charged. Leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of it. My name is Rob, and have a wonderful day.